My name is Caleb Turner. I'm 24. And the night my father slammed his fist on the dinner table, everything I believed about family shattered. Silverware jumped, wine bled across the tablecloth, and his voice cut through the room like glass. You've never earned your place here. I remember the stunned silence, my mother's fixed smile, my brother's smirk. That was Helen's birthday dinner. But what they didn't know was while they toasted each other's lies, I'd already started collecting receipts. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because this isn't just a story about money, it's about boundaries, blood, and the moment you realize love has conditions. What happened after that dinner still echoes through every part of my life. I used to think every family argued the same way loud, messy, but harmless. Back then, I didn't know that some words never leave the room. They just hang in the air until the next argument pulls them down again. We lived in Willow Creek, a town so small everyone knew who patched whose roof or who missed church last Sunday. Our house sat near the edge of town, a two-story with peeling white paint and a porch that leaned slightly forward, like it was tired of standing. I can still smell the cedar polish my mom used every Sunday morning, mixing with my dad's cigarette smoke sneaking in through the back door. Dad Doug Turner was the kind of man who saw himself as self-made. Contractor, builder, storyteller. He'd brag about starting with nothing, though somehow that nothing always included other people's favors. He liked to say he built homes for families, but inside ours, the foundation was already cracked. Mom Helen was softer, at least on the surface. She spoke like everything she said was an apology wrapped in sweetness. Her real estate smile never dropped, even when the words underneath were knives. And then there was Mason, 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and apparently 3 times more lovable. He was golden from birth, the one people wanted to root for. When he crashed Dad's truck at 17, Dad said, "At least he's honest about it." When I forgot to take out the trash, it was a week of lectures about respect. Growing up in that house was like living under two different rule books. Mason's mistakes were lessons. Mine were disappointments. I still remember the first dinner that broke me a little. Mason had failed his first college class business management. Dad poured him another helping of roast and said, "You'll figure it out. Not everyone learns the same way." That same week, I got my first B on a math exam. Dad didn't even look up from his paper when he said, "You're slipping, Caleb. You can't afford to coast." That word afford it always came up. Money was Dad's language of love. If you weren't earning, you weren't valuable. By high school, I'd stopped asking for help. I learned to fix my own computer, mend my own clothes, even cook basic meals because I didn't want to owe anyone anything. I got a part-time job at Henderson's Diner, washing dishes after class. Mom said it built character. Dad said it built nothing. But that job gave me something I never had at home: quiet. The hum of the dishwashers, the clatter of plates, the rhythm of earning something no one could take away. When I got accepted into North State University on a partial scholarship, I waited 3 days before telling my parents. I'd imagined maybe they'd be proud. Dad barely glanced up. "That's good," he said. "Just don't come crying when bills pile up." Mom smiled. "We always knew you'd be independent." Independent. That word was supposed to be a compliment, but in our house, it was code for you're on your own. I worked 3 jobs through college: library clerk, tutoring freshmen, part-time barista. I lived in a one-room apartment that smelled like coffee and mold, but it was mine. Every now and then, Mom would call, her voice soft, sweet, rehearsed. "Honey, how's school? By the way, your dad's truck broke down again. Could you help us out? Just this once?" At first, it was $50, then 100, then my tax refund. She always ended with, "You're such a good son. Mason could learn a thing or two from you." But Mason never had to learn. He'd already inherited the luxury of being loved without earning it. After graduation, I landed a job in the city as a risk analyst. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked the predictability. Numbers don't gaslight you. They either add up or they don't. I rented a small apartment downtown, furnished it with secondhand furniture, and kept one shelf for something I called the record. It started as a habit, saving receipts, bank statements, scanned documents. I told myself it was practical. In truth, it was a survival instinct. Because when your family constantly rewrites history, you learn to keep your own copy. The calls from Mom didn't stop. "Your dad's business had a slow month. Your brother's trying to get another startup off the ground. It's temporary, sweetheart. I started sending money directly to their electric bill, then the car insurance, then the property taxes. Each time, she said the same line just until things stabilize. But nothing ever stabilized. There was one summer I went home to visit. The heat sat heavy on the house like regret. Doug was in the backyard, shirtless, hammering something that didn't need fixing. Mason was inside, on the couch, pitching crypto schemes to a friend on speakerphone. I sat in the kitchen, sipping iced tea that tasted faintly of guilt. Proud of you, Mom said, stirring sugar into her glass. You've really made it on your own. I smiled. Thanks. Then she added, but maybe now you can help us with the mortgage. Just for a bit. I should have said no. But old habits die hard. Later that night, I found an envelope on the counter. My name scribbled across it. Inside was a copy of a mortgage renewal, my signature neatly typed at the bottom. I didn't remember signing anything. When I asked Dad about it, he waved it off. It's just paperwork. You were a co-signer last time. They just roll it over automatically. Something about that didn't sit right, but I didn't push. At 22, you still want to believe your parents wouldn't lie to you, at least not about something that big. I didn't know it then. I'd tell myself later, but that signature would come back to haunt me. A few months after that, Mason called me, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. Guess what, man? I'm starting a crypto consulting firm. Got a huge client from Miami. I congratulated him, pretending not to notice the echo in his room, the same echo you hear when someone's talking big from a small, empty space. When I hung up, I looked at my bank app, another auto withdrawal for my parents' electric bill. I remember whispering to myself, this isn't helping, it's feeding. The more I gave, the less I felt like a son. I was becoming their safety net, stitched together from guilt and obligation. Then came the Thanksgiving incident, the first real crack in the mask. Mason showed up in a brand new Dodge Challenger, cherry red, gleaming under the porch light. Everyone cheered like he'd won the lottery. I asked, new car? He grinned. Just a lease. Business expense. Dad clapped him on the back. That's my boy. Later, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. Sweetheart, can you cover the water bill this month? It slipped through. I wanted to scream, ask the guy with the Challenger. But I didn't. I just nodded. That night, lying in my old room, the one they'd turned into storage, I stared at the ceiling fan turning slow circles. Every rotation whispered the same thing. This isn't normal. But back then, I still thought maybe if I just kept the peace a little longer, they'd finally see me. They never did. The first winter after that, Thanksgiving, I stopped visiting as often. Work kept me busy, or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was simpler. I couldn't stomach another dinner pretending everything was fine. My apartment overlooked the river. At night, I'd sit on the balcony, listening to the hum of traffic, the muffled laughter from the bar across the street, the world moving on without me. There was a kind of peace in solitude, the kind that made you forget you were lonely. One night, Mom called. I almost didn't answer, but guilt picks up the phone faster than common sense ever could. Caleb, honey, she started, her voice soft as always. Your father's been under a lot of stress. The business is slow, and the bank's been calling again. I swallowed. You still owe them? It's just the usual renewal process, she said quickly. Anyway, Mason's been such a blessing lately, helping around the house, fixing things. There it was again, her favorite tactic. Praise someone else just long enough to make you question if you're doing enough. Then came the real reason. We were wondering if you could help us cover this month's mortgage, just until we sort things out. I said I'd think about it, but I already knew the answer. I wouldn't. Not this time. Still, something about the way she'd said, bank's been calling, stuck with me. A week later, I logged into my credit report. I don't know what I expected, maybe reassurance that everything was fine. What I saw instead made my stomach drop. There were 2 active credit accounts under my name. One was mine. The other wasn't. A hardware chain. Several large purchases. New appliances. The billing address. My parents' house. My chest went cold. I called the bank immediately, and after 30 minutes of transfers, a representative said the name on the joint application. Douglas Turner. My father. Sir, she said carefully, if you didn't authorize it, we'll start a fraud report. I hung up without answering. Fraud. The word didn't even sound real attached to my family's name. But deep down, it fit too perfectly. I didn't call them right away. Instead, I did what I always do. I gathered data. I pulled bank statements, loan records, even that old mortgage renewal envelope I'd once ignored. The signatures didn't match. Mine was careful, slanted slightly right. The one on the refi looked like someone traced it from memory. I called Riley Boone from Granite Mortgage, pretending to be just another client double-checking paperwork. She remembered me. Oh yeah, Turner. The refi 2 years ago? That was done through e-sign, right? I hesitated. That's what my dad said. There was a pause. Actually, that file shows mixed authentication. Weird. One page scanned. The rest e-signed. That's not typical. Something inside me clicked into place, a quiet, terrifying click. Can you send me a copy? I asked. I shouldn't, but Riley sighed. I'll email you the public sections. When the file hit my inbox, my hands were shaking. There it was. Page 3. My name, my signature. But the metadata said it was scanned from a local printer at 9:43 p.m. on a night I was 3 states away. I remember staring at the screen so long my eyes burned. My father had forged me. The next day, I drove back to Willow Creek unannounced. The drive felt shorter than it should have, like anger bends time. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Mason outside, tinkering with something under the garage lights. The rigs buzzed like a swarm of flies. He looked up, smirked. City boy returns. Need a loan? Where's Dad? He nodded toward the house. Watching the game. Why? I didn't answer. Inside, Mom was setting out pie like it was Sunday supper. She froze when she saw me. Caleb, you didn't say you were coming. Did Dad open a credit line in my name? I asked. Her face barely moved. Just a flicker, like a curtain shifting. Oh, that, she said softly. We were going to tell you. It's temporary. The business was tight, and your father needed another line to cover expenses. You used my name, I said, without asking. She reached for my arm. Don't be dramatic. It's family money. You'll get it back. Dad walked in right then, beer in hand. What's with the tone? I turned. You forged my signature. He didn't even blink. Relax. I told you before it's temporary. You spent 8 grand, I said. He set his beer down hard enough for it to slosh over. Everything I have, I built for this family. You're part of it. You're part of the debt too. Mom's voice cut in, pleading. Your father's been through so much, Caleb. Don't make this harder. Harder? I said quietly. You've been making it harder since I was old enough to work. Dad stepped closer. You think you're better than us because you've got a desk job and a 401k? Without me, you wouldn't even have credit worth stealing. That line credit worth stealing hung between us like smoke. Something inside me went very still. I looked at him and realized this wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. In their minds, I was just a resource, a renewable one. I'm done, I said. Mom frowned. Done with what? With this. I gestured around. With pretending this is family. Dad laughed. A low, bitter sound. You owe us, Caleb. Without us, you'd be nothing. I met his eyes. Without you, I wouldn't have learned how to protect myself. Then I turned and walked out. That night, I sat in my car outside a gas station, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. For 24 years, I'd been trying to earn a place in that house. Now I realized there was no place left to earn. When I got back to my apartment, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Turner case. Inside it, I saved everything: emails, statements, screenshots, Riley's PDF, even the voicemail Mom left later that night. Honey, we just need your signature one last time. That phrase "one last time" used to make me cave. Now it sounded like a threat. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, watching the folder grow heavier with proof, and whispered to myself, if they built a house on lies, I'll let it collapse. But even then, I didn't know how far it would all go. I didn't know there were still layers of truth buried under those layers that, once uncovered, would burn everything they'd built to ash. The weeks after that night blurred together like static. At work, I smiled, ran numbers, attended meetings. On paper, I was fine. Inside, I was quietly auditing my family's destruction. The first sign they realized something was wrong came when Mom called from a blocked number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Caleb, she said. Too sweet. Too calm. Your father's been trying to reach you. We think there's been a misunderstanding with the credit account. There's no misunderstanding, I said. You opened it. You spent the money. She sighed. We're not thieves. We're family. That's exactly what thieves say when they share your last name. She hung up before I could say more. 2 days later, I got an alert on my bank app, another inquiry under my SSN. Different lender. Different city. I called immediately. Application came through this morning, the agent said. Joint with Douglas Turner again. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Yeah, that tracks. That's when I froze my credit completely. No new accounts, no renewals, no excuses. A week later, a letter from Granite Mortgage arrived. Plain white envelope, my name centered neat as gilt. Your removal as cosigner has been initiated. It read, pending verification. It should have felt like victory, but all I could think about was how quiet they'd been since. Silence in my family never meant peace. It meant plotting. The next Saturday, I drove back to Willow Creek, not to see them, but to see the house. The siding had started to peel worse. The porch lights flickered, and the grass was ankle-high. For the first time, it looked like the metaphor it had always been. Neglected, overbuilt, hollow. Through the kitchen window, I saw Mom at the table, papers spread around her. Mortgage statements, maybe. Bills. She looked smaller, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or just bad lighting. I didn't knock. Instead, I turned away and nearly ran into Donna Pierce, our neighbor. She was holding a bag of groceries and gave me the kind of smile small towns reserve for gossip and progress. Haven't seen you around, Caleb, she said. Your folks okay? Heard Doug had some trouble with the bank. My stomach tightened. Where'd you hear that? She leaned in like we were conspirators. Oh, you know, people talk. Said he had to use his son's credit just to keep the business running. Such a shame. You were always the responsible one. I forced a polite laugh. Yeah, funny how that works. But inside, I felt something snap into alignment. The town was starting to whisper, and my parents hated nothing more than public embarrassment. That night, I got a text from Mason. Bro, can we talk? Don't make this worse. You're ruining Dad. I didn't answer. The next day, he called anyway. Look, I don't know what you told the bank, but now Dad's accounts are frozen. He can't pay the guys, can't buy materials. I leaned back in my chair. Then maybe he shouldn't have used my name. Jesus, Caleb, it's just money. You're acting like we robbed a bank. You did worse, I said. You robbed trust. Mason laughed under his breath. You've always had this martyr complex. You think you're better than us. I said quietly. No, I just stopped pretending we're the same. He cursed and hung up. That night, while checking the folder, I noticed something odd in the life insurance policy Mom once said was family coverage. The policyholder name was Helen Turner, but under the secondary insured, it listed Caleb T, and that T matched the forged signature on the mortgage refi. I stared at it for a long time, my pulse climbing. They hadn't just forged me once. They'd built an entire web of small, overlapping cons enough to make disentangling myself feel impossible. I called Sophie Chin, my old classmate from the compliance team at Meridian Bank. She picked up on the second ring. Caleb Turner, she said. Haven't heard that voice in forever. You sound like someone reading a confession. I might be, I said. Then I told her everything, every signature, every forged page, every lie. She was silent for a moment. Then, you know this isn't just civil fraud. It's federal if they used your SSN more than once. I know. So what do you want to do? I exhaled. Build a record. No emotion, no yelling. Just evidence. That's cold, she said. That's the point. That night, I printed every file, slid them into the folder labeled Turner case, and placed it in a fireproof box. For the first time, I felt something close to calm. Not peace, just preparation. But calm never lasts long in a Turner family story. 3 days later, my phone lit up at 11:46 p.m. Mom, I almost ignored it, but curiosity is a crueler leash than guilt. Caleb, she whispered, voice shaking. You need to talk to your father. I don't, I said. Not unless he plans to confess. She drew a sharp breath. You can't just abandon your family like this. Funny, I said. I thought that's what you did the moment you forged my name. There was silence, then a quiet sob, not the kind that breaks your heart, but the kind that begs for another chance to manipulate you. We're losing the house, she said finally. The bank called. They said without your credit, the renewal's dead. Then maybe it's time you learn to live without me, I said. She gasped, whispered something like, "You'll regret this," and hung up. But she was right about one thing. The process had already started. The next morning, I got a notification from Granite Mortgage. RE. Account review initiated property at 14 Willow Creek. Below that, a line from Riley Boone. For your information, Caleb. Internal review flagged multiple signature inconsistencies on the 2021 file. Might escalate. Stay put. Stay put. Easier said than done when your entire family is unraveling in real time. By the weekend, the whispers had turned into headlines. Small ones. Local business section only. Turner Contracting faces audit over loan irregularities. No names yet, but in Willow Creek, everyone already knew who it meant. That's when Mason showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find him standing there. Shoulders tight, face pale under a forced grin. "Hey, city boy," he said. "Can we talk?" "About what? Crypto or credit fraud?" He ignored that. "You think this is justice? You're blowing up everything over a few forms. You forged my life, Mason. Dad said you'd react like this, self-righteous as hell." "I'm not righteous," I said. "I'm just finally done being your ATM." He took a shaky breath, eyes darting toward the hallway. "You don't get it. If the audit sticks, Dad could lose his license. He could go to prison. Then maybe he shouldn't have treated family like collateral." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "He did it for all of us." "No," I said. "He did it because he could." Something flickered behind his eyes, not guilt, just fear disguised as anger. "You're ruining us." I didn't flinch. "No, Mason. You ruined yourselves the second you thought I wouldn't fight back." He left, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. For a moment, the silence after felt almost holy. Then the adrenaline crashed, leaving nothing but the hum of my refrigerator and the faint click of my grandfather's clock. That same night, Sophie texted me a single line. "You were right. There's a pattern more than one forged doc. You need to lawyer up." I already had. A small consumer rights firm, downtown, young, hungry, ruthless. They didn't flinch when I told them. The defendants were my parents. They just nodded and said, "We'll need everything." Not. So, I gave them everything. Emails, PDF metadata, photos of the rigs in Mason's garage, screenshots of Mom's temporary requests, every detail meticulously dated, labeled, and filed. That's when the attorney, a woman named Kendra Weiss, said something that still rings in my head. "You're not seeking revenge, Caleb. You're establishing reality. People like this rewrite history until paperwork stops them." It hit me hard because it was true. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about evidence. Still, every new document I unearthed twisted the knife deeper. There was a 7-year-old lien Doug had claimed to pay off years ago. The payment source? A card under my name. Another forgery. Another pattern. The puzzle pieces were forming a picture uglier than I was ready for. They hadn't just used me once, they'd been doing it for years, casually, like it was a family business. One night, as I reviewed the files, a thought crept in. How long had they been planning this? Then I saw it in an email thread between Dad and a consultant named H. Reed, discussing credit optimization for the Turner household. The earliest message dated back to when I was still in college. It wasn't a panic move. It was a system. That realization made my chest go cold. They hadn't fallen on hard times. They just found a way to fund their habits through me. The next day, a message popped up from Riley again. "For your information, they're trying to push through another modification under Mason's name. You'll want to watch that." So they were still trying. Even under investigation, they were finding new angles. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't scared anymore. Just tired, the kind of tired that makes you dangerous. That was when the plan started forming in my head. Not a loud one. Not a movie moment. Just quiet, precise, inevitable. If they wanted to treat me like data, I'd use data to bury them. I didn't know it then, but the storm was already moving in. And when it hit, it wouldn't sound like thunder. It would sound like the click of a send button. The night it all came to a head started, like any other quiet. Cold. Too still for what was about to happen. I was in my apartment, the only light coming from the glow of my laptop. The folder labeled Turner case sat open. All 126 files perfectly ordered. Emails, statements, photos, forged signatures. Every proof that love in my family had been replaced by paperwork and leverage. At exactly 9:12 p.m., I got a call from Riley Boone. "Caleb," she said, voice low. "Granite's compliance flagged the mortgage file. It's under formal investigation now." I froze. Formal? Yeah. We've looped in the state regulator. If you want to submit a supporting affidavit, this is the time. My pulse quickened. And if I do? Then your name's clear. Their signatures become evidence. Her tone wasn't sympathetic. It was professional clinical. But to me, it sounded like freedom. When I hung up, I opened the document I'd been working on for weeks. Affidavit of financial exploitation. Every sentence factual, emotionless. On or around March 2021, a mortgage refinance was filed using a forged signature of the undersigned. It was all there, down to the timestamp on the scanned file Riley had sent me. I signed it digitally, uploaded it to the shared legal folder, and hit submit. The screen blinked once confirmation sent. For a long time, I just stared at that little green check mark. It was the quietest act of rebellion I'd ever done. And it changed everything. By Monday, the dominoes started to fall. Granite froze the Turner mortgage. The state opened an inquiry into Turner contracting. And within 48 hours, the local credit bureau issued a fraud alert tied to Doug's social security number. I didn't call them. I didn't gloat. But I knew they'd find out soon enough. That Friday night, the knock on my door came hard 3 short raps. The kind Dad used when he wanted to be obeyed. I hesitated before opening. And there he was. Doug Turner. My father. Only this time, he didn't look like the man who used to tower over me at the dinner table. He looked smaller. Hollow. His jacket hung loose. Eyes bloodshot. Skin gray beneath the porch light. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside like he still owned the room. "You did this," he said quietly. "The bank, the papers, the audit you." I kept my voice even. "No, you did." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You think this makes you the hero? You just destroyed your own family." "Family?" I said. "That ended the moment you forged my name." His face tightened. "You act like I stole from a stranger. I built that house for all of us. For you." "For me?" I said, almost laughing. "You built it on my credit." He slammed his fist against the wall, just like he had that birthday night. The sound echoed through my apartment, and for a second, it was like I was back at that table, the silverware shaking. "I gave you everything," he shouted. "You wouldn't have a damn thing without me." I met his eyes and said it flat. "And you wouldn't have a mortgage without me." He blinked, jaw working like he wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Then he laughed again, cold, humorless. "You think the town will see you as some victim? They'll see a son who ruined his father. They'll see a traitor. They'll see documents," I said. "And those don't lie." He stepped closer until we were face to face. The smell of stale beer and sawdust clung to him. "You think you can bury me with paperwork?" he hissed. I didn't answer. I just opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. On it was the email I'd scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning, addressed to Jenna Alvarez, the reporter from the Tri-County Ledger, and CC'd to Granite Mortgage's compliance office. Subject line: Timeline of unauthorized financial activity, Turner Contracting. Attached, 54 pages of exhibits, labeled, dated, irrefutable. He read it in silence, then looked up at me, fury and fear twisting together. "You wouldn't," he said. "I already did," I replied. He froze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of my grandfather's old watch on my wrist. Finally, he said, low and hoarse, "You'll regret this, son." I shook my head. "You stopped being my father the moment you signed my name." He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. The sound was final, like the last nail in a coffin. The next morning, the email went out right on schedule. By noon, Jenna Alvarez called. "I read everything," she said. "This isn't just a family dispute. This is financial forgery, possibly criminal misrepresentation. Are you ready for it to go public?" I hesitated. Then, "Yes." "All right," she said. "Give me one quote for the record." I thought for a moment. Family should never cost you your name. She was silent for a beat. Then, that's going in the headline. The story broke 2 days later. Local contractor under investigation for identity fraud. Sources claim family ties to victim. It spread fast. By Wednesday, the town Facebook group was flooded with posts, speculation, sympathy, and the occasional defense from people who still thought Doug could do no wrong. But the silence from my parents said enough. Then, the unexpected twist. Mason posted a shaky statement video on his business page, trying to spin the narrative. My brother's been struggling emotionally, he said, eyes darting off screen. He's trying to make a name for himself by hurting the family. But the internet is merciless. Within hours, someone leaked the full audio from a phone argument we'd had weeks ago, the one Mason secretly recorded to make me look ungrateful. What he didn't realize was that, in the background of that recording, Doug's voice could be heard saying, "Yeah, I used his SSN. So what? He owes us." The clip spread through the group like wildfire. Comments turned vicious. Sympathy shifted. The town that once admired the Turners now called them thieves. That night, Helen texted me. Just 2 words. How could you? I stared at it for a long time before replying. By telling the truth. I didn't hear from her again. The next week, Granite Mortgage officially terminated the Turner account. The property was marked for foreclosure pending resolution of fraud findings. Doug's contracting license was suspended. Mason's crypto venture collapsed overnight. And for the first time in my life, I slept through the night without waking to a phone call that started with, "Can you help?" But peace doesn't sound like victory. It sounds like paperwork closing quietly. A folder zipped, a file marked complete. When I left for work that morning, the air felt sharp, clean, new. Still, as I stood by the river, watching sunlight scatter over the water, I couldn't shake one thought. I'd won. But at what cost? Because in the end, revenge doesn't roar. It whispers. And sometimes, it whispers your own name. For weeks after the article dropped, my life became eerily quiet. No more calls from the bank. No more texts begging for help one last time. Just the rhythmic hum of my coffee machine in the morning and the low buzz of city traffic through my apartment window. People think revenge is loud shouting, sirens, courtroom drama. But mine unfolded like static fading to silence. A silence I'd earned. Then, one afternoon, as I was leaving work, Sophie called. "They're panicking," she said. "Granite forwarded your affidavit to the state attorney's office. This might turn into a criminal case." I hesitated. I didn't want it to go that far. She laughed softly. "You didn't push it. You just stopped covering it up." I didn't say anything, because she was right. I hadn't burned the house down, I'd just stopped patching the leaks. A few days later, a courier envelope appeared at my door. No return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper. A photocopy of the property deed from the old Turner house. Across the top scrawled in my father's handwriting. "You wanted independence. Now you have it." No signature. No apology. Just the final line of a man who'd rather die proud than live accountable. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at those words. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Another part just felt tired. That night, I walked down to the river. The air smelled like rain and asphalt, the kind of scent that reminds you of new beginnings. I took the folded deed from my pocket and read it again under the streetlight. Then I tore it in half. And again. And again. The pieces fluttered into the water like ashes. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably packing boxes, facing hearings, maybe still blaming me. But I wasn't angry anymore. For the first time, I felt distance, real, clean distance between who they were and who I'd become. And yet, deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because in families like mine, guilt never dies, it just hides, waiting for a new host. I looked out at the dark river, the city lights bleeding into the current, and whispered to myself, they wanted control. I gave them consequence. Then I turned and walked home. They thought I'd finished my revenge. But all I'd really done was begin to rebuild. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you know this kind of silence, the kind that comes after the storm. When all that's left is truth. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit like or subscribe if you've ever had to choose peace over blood. Because stories like mine aren't rare. They're just the ones no one talks about. And trust me, this story isn't over. Some debts are financial, others are emotional, but both come due eventually.